Hello and welcome to League of Champions here on WION. Sri Lanka are alive in the ICC Champions Trophy 2017 after a masterly run chase against India at the Kennington Oval. Asked to chase down a mammoth 322, the Lankans paced their innings beautifully, riding on some sensational batting by their top order. Chris Harris is here with me. Chris, totally different to what we expected this game to pan out.
It was. Well, can I first say what a terrific game of cricket. It was a brilliant game. And I think we need to congratulate the groundsmen and, at the Oval as well, because what a wonderful cricket wicket for one-day cricket. But in all honesty, I don't think India did too much wrong. I just think Sri Lanka were magnificent with the bat in hand. And as you said, 5 brilliant innings.
Yes, they absolutely bossed that run chase. And when you get into a match chasing 322 and you don't get a very good start, it could get shaky, especially an inexperienced batting lineup like the Sri Lankans. But they had people, and as we were talking about this when we were looking ahead to the show, they had people who put their hands up when it counted.
Oh, exactly. We thought Dick Weller might be important at the top of the innings, but he sort of failed. So that was another battle that we got right. But then you look at a couple of young guys, and one of them, particularly Gunnar, wasn't even going to be playing except for injury. So then, and also obviously Mendes, man of the match. Those two basically set the game up.
At one point of time, it looked like they had thrown it away when they got needlessly run out. But we'll get to the specifics of that match after I get you through what's happened. Let's get straight to the result. We have witnessed an absolute thriller at the Kennington Oval in London. Sri Lanka have won their first match of the ICC Champions Trophy 2017, beating India in a game that saw over 340 runs being scored. That's why Chris was thanking the ground staff. Now, Sri Lanka won the toss and put India in. Openers Rohit Sharma and Shikhar Dhawan laid a solid platform for India. The duo added 138 in 24.5 overs, and this was their second successive 100-plus stand in the tournament. Rohit fell for 78, but Dhawan went on to score his 10th ODI century and a record equaling 3rd at the Champions Trophy. The final impetus was provided by former captain MS Dhoni, who hit 63 of 52 balls as India finished with a healthy 321 for 6. Sri Lanka lost Niroshan Dickwella early on, but a spirited 159-run stand between Danushka Gunatilaka and Kusal Mendes kept them well within reach of the target. Both, however, lost their wickets to needless run-outs. Captain Angelo Mathews and Kusal Perera kept the Lankans in the hunt with a 75-run stand which ended with Perera retiring hurt on 47. But Asela Gunaratne came in and flayed the Indian bowling to take Sri Lanka home. Let me quickly run you through that scorecard. India batting first, and as we said, Shikhar Dhawan getting 125, Rohit Sharma 78, MS Dhoni, whose love affair with Sri Lanka continued, scoring 63, and then Kedar Jadhav at the end getting 25. But for Sri Lanka, even though they lost an early wicket, those two right at the top, Kusal Mendes and Gunatilaka, actually setting them up with that absolutely sensational second wicket stand. And then in walked in Angelo Mathews, the captain, wasn't fully fit, did not bowl, but he stayed there till the end and got 52 not out. For the Indian bowlers, very sad reading, just Bhuvneshwar Kumar getting on that final score sheet. Chris, let's look at how Sri Lanka bossed this run chase, because as you were saying, the Indian bowlers didn't do very badly. Initially, they had them reeling. Bhuvneshwar Kumar, great opening spell. But credit, let's give credit where it's due. Those two, especially that second wicket stand, that took the game away from India.
Yeah, it did. And I think, look, we've got to look at the conditions as well. You know, I think all the bowlers struggled at different times. Look, if you look at the Indian innings, I think they scored 321. There was that little period that we talked about in that mid-show between 30 and 40, and I think they only got 48 or 49.
49, yeah.
And that was probably key. So I think at half-time India were reasonably happy at 321. If they were being really critical, they thought maybe we would have got 340. But as you said, that second working partnership between Gunatilaka and Mendes was outstanding. India
picked 4 seam bowlers, and this is exactly the ploy which worked against Pakistan. In your opinion, why didn't it work here? Were the conditions not favourable at all, even though we saw Bhuvneshwar getting a lot of assistance early on? Yeah, I think the two. Look, I think the Indian, as I said, the Indian bowlers didn't do too much wrong. I think 2 of the keys were Pandya didn't bowl particularly well, and Jadeja as well is one of those guys that you can rely on, the left-arm spinner, and he had an off day today. You know, normally he bowls a lot of dot balls and can apply pressure, and that also helps the seamers because when they come back,
the batsmen have to take extra risks against them. And I think today Jadeja was off the mark and Pandya, and that put pressure on all the other bowlers.
And you had a rare sight in Indian cricket of the Indian captain coming into bowl, and he almost got a wicket. And at that point of time, he was trying everything, because he was talking a lot to Mahendra Singh Dhoni behind the stumps, his former captain. They were trying to figure out a way to stem the run flow, because everything, you know, you needed 3 or 4 or 5 overs where India completely strangled Sri Lanka. That wasn't happening. The two, Gunatilaka and Mendes, were finding the boundaries. You had Kedar Jadhav and Kohli coming on to bowl, but nothing seemed to work.
No, I think he was looking to buy a wicket, and I think you've got to give credit to the Sri Lankan batsmen. They played superbly. They took risks when they needed to, but they were calculated risks, and they all played to their strengths. I mean, some of the shots, you know, some of the flicks over fine leg, even towards the end of the innings, and when there was gaps in the outfield, they looked to exploit those. And all the batsmen, I think there was 5 really crucial innings for Sri Lanka, and you know, 4 of those were from reasonably young, inexperienced players. And obviously the cool head of Mathews at the end, who hasn't played for 10 months. And you consider the way how well he came in and struck the ball from the start was an absolute key as well. And it was great that he finished up with 50 odd not out and took his side home and hit the winning runs.
Yes, and since we are talking about the batsmen, I'll just ask the producer to get the wagon wheel of Gunatilaka, because he provided that initial impetus, and Kusal Mendes did take his time. And we're going to look at that, and just tell me what struck you when you're going to see that wagon wheel which comes on our screen. The way he took on the Indian bowling, and this is Kusal Mendes. Let's talk of him first. And when you look at this wagon wheel, and this couple of shots stood out for me when he actually stepped down the track and hit Jadeja, you know, with against the spin.
Yeah, a lot of this wagon wheel, as you said, is against Jadeja because he played him particularly well. He swept him twice, I think, for 4, and then he also went down the wicket and hit him off the front foot over mid-wicket. And then I think it was about a ball later, Jadeja got a little bit short and he pulled him. So he was very severe on the left-arm spin of Jadeja. And then you can see he played all around the world, all around the wagon. The only place he didn't really play was through backward point. So that shows that at least the bowlers were in nice and tight. But it was a magnificent innings. And as it turned out, it was a match-winning innings because he got man of the match. Yes,
and I think both would be kicking themselves for not being there at the end to finish it off, because needless run-outs. But let's also look at his partner in crime, which was Gunatilaka, because at the beginning of this match, just 2 days before this game, he wasn't even in the squad. He was drafted in because he was already in England playing great cricket, I think, and comes in and then does this, 76 for 72. So what happens now when Upul Taranga's 2-match suspension gets over?
Well, that's the key point. What does happen? Because he's got one more game to sit out, and if these 2 guys keep batting like that, I think it's going to be very hard to get him in. I think he may come in batting at 4 and perhaps replace someone like Chandimal. But, I mean, what a wagon wheel. Basically, it shows his strength. He scores all around the ground, and he's a difficult guy to bowl to. When he was put under pressure, he was happy to use his feet, move around the crease a little bit, and as I said, he's strong all around the wicket. So you look at that wagon wheel and you think, well, where can we stop him scoring? And there aren't too many areas. Maybe quite full and sort of off stump, where he only scored 2 through mid-off, and that's probably his only weakness.
And at that point of time, perhaps you needed Jasprit Bumrah to come in and fire in those Yorkers, because they kept bowling a bit back of the length as well, I noticed, and this was giving them room to extend their arms when they needed to.
Yeah, I think that was the pressure that Sri Lankan batsmen put on the Indian bowlers. As I said, I don't think they bowled too badly. It was just that Sri Lankan batting side played particularly well. And when they were under a little bit of pressure and they had an over or a couple of over period where they hadn't scored too many, all of a sudden they took a calculated risk, played to their strength and hit that boundary when they needed it. And then it just applied that pressure on India. They went searching a little bit and made it a little bit easier for the Sri Lankan batsmen.
You know, we were talking about contrasts before this game, and we were, looking at the way England approached an innings. They bat in one gear. India looked to build an innings. But I think Sri Lanka also seemed to have learned from the Indians, because once they built that platform, it's very difficult especially in one-day cricket, that once you have that platform, you have the other guys coming through. They have the freedom to express themselves, because at that point of time, at around 30 overs, they were already 180. So the target wasn't looking as big as it was at the start of the innings.
Exactly. Building that platform is absolutely key. And I think especially on a good surface, and especially when you're chasing a big total, people's tendencies or teams' tendencies are, we're chasing over 300, we've got to be super aggressive. You lose 2 or 3 wickets and the game's gone. Whereas Sri Lanka took a leaf out of India's book and thought first 10 overs, Dick Weller will have a bit of a go, but if he gets out, we'll get through that first 10 overs, make sure we don't lose another wicket, try and score 40 or 50, and I think they scored 50 as well. And then the next 50 was even quicker, and they just keep building momentum, and they didn't lose wickets. They had a couple of really big partnerships. And if they lost one wicket, they made sure they got another good partnership. And I think that's one thing they did really well, and never really let India back into the game.
I actually jotted down the over progression for India and Sri Lanka. I'll just read it out to you. Because India in the first 10 scored 48. Sri Lanka responded with 44 for 1. Between 10 and 20, India scored 59. Sri Lanka scored 64. Between overs 30 and 40, India scored 62. Sri Lanka got 76. And between overs 40 and 50, India got about 103. Sri Lanka didn't have that much to do because that platform was set. And as you were talking, India perhaps took their foot off the accelerator in the overs 30 to 40. And that seems to have, in the final analysis, hurt them badly.
Yeah, I think we've got to give credit to the Sri Lankan bowlers, because that period where India lost their way just a little bit.
Because Kohli was out for a duck and Yuvraj Singh was scratchy by his exalted standards.
Yeah, I was just about to say, so it was when Yuvraj Singh came in, and I think he ended up scoring 7 off 18 balls, and that was in that key period between 30 and 40, and that's where India lost a little bit of their momentum. And I think, you know, if they'd played a little bit better in that period, they could have scored that 350. And if they'd scored 350, I think that was a bridge too far for Sri Lanka. But that's why I said at half-time, 320 is going to be a massive chase. But Sri Lanka have just given themselves a little bit of a chance by reducing that chance of India not getting 350. And as we saw, well, they did play magnificently and they ended up winning.
And also, talk to me, Chris, because you've played the game and we haven't. We can just look at it from the outside. There is something called as scoreboard pressure. And we could see the Sri Lankan team sitting in the dressing room, very relaxed when that second wicket pairing was going about and reducing that deficit. Does it play at the back of your mind and sitting there in the dressing room when you have to come out next, knowing that the guys are doing the job and setting the platform for us?
Oh, it certainly gives you the confidence. As I said, you had 2 young players, and Tilaka and Mendes, who played magnificently, and one was only playing through injury. So that partnership gave the rest of the batsmen sitting in the dressing room and the rest of the team that confidence to come out. You know, the other important innings for me was Pereira went off injured, but Guratna, who came in, and his first 3 balls he missed out. He couldn't score, and you thought, well, maybe Pereira retiring could have been the key to this match. But then he got a short one, hit it for 6. All of a sudden he's underway, and he scored at a strike rate of 150 plus, and that took the pressure off Mathews and just made it that much easier.
But Chris, you know, when you look at the entire Indian bowling, there was talk, Ashwin sitting out, you know, Ashwin's your premier bowler. There could be a case now for getting him back in, because just to go through the Indian bowlers, Bhuvneshwar Kumar, 10 overs, 1 for 54. Umesh Yadav, 9.4 overs, none for 67. Bumrah, none for 52. Hardik Pandya, 7 overs, none for 51. Jadeja, 6 overs for 52. Jadeja and Pandya were 2 bowlers I think Virat Kohli relied on to not just strangle the innings, but also get through those 10 overs each, but it didn't happen.
You know, it didn't really work for the seamers today, so as you said, it gives a great argument for Ashwin coming in. You know, Group B now, basically straight out quarterfinals. So India, I thought were going to play the same team throughout. They still may, but now that certainly strengthens the argument to bring Ashwin back, because we know he's a quality bowler. He can bowl at the start of the innings if he has to. And, you know, he's a bowler that Kohli, if he's in the side, can bring him in at any time to try and break a partnership. And he can also bowl pretty effectively at the death. So that's something they're going to have to really think long and hard about.
It's how difficult is this game of cricket. You know, India seem to have bossed Pakistan off the field. Everyone's going pretty gung-ho. But right now, 1 defeat, and we're also looking now at what are the options. That's the format of the tournament. But, you know, Chris, when we were doing our preview show, we'd asked you this morning to pick 4 or 5 key battles. So we're just now going to look at how those battles fared, you know. I'm going to ask a producer to have those battles up on our video wall here, and we're going to look at how you fared, because you seem to have called them pretty well, barring 1 or 2, and some of your punts paid off.
Yeah, well, I mean, we talked about some key battles. And
this is the first one, Virat Kohli versus Nuwan Pradeep. Let me tell you that Nuwan Pradeep got Virat Kohli. 1-0.
And 3 balls. So that was a good... So, I mean, these are just battles that I thought were going to be important. And obviously, Pradeep got Kohli, which is a massive wicket. As it turned out, I think the other Indian batsman played so well, still scored 320, so it perhaps wasn't that important, but...
Yuvraj Singh versus Asela Gunaratne, the part-time spinner, and, you know...
And he got him as well.
Yeah, he got him
played
as well.
on. I think once again, he only faced 2 or 3 balls, and that also could have been a key. But I think Yuvraj...
What was the key? You predicting it?
No, I think Yuvraj really struggled today. And, you know, 7 off 18, I think that's where India lost their way a little bit. and stop them perhaps scoring perhaps 350.
Because he likes seamers early on in his innings. You know, he can get this bat swing going. But against the spinners, traditionally, he does take a bit of time to start.
He loves the ball coming on, so he can use the pace. And against the spinners, he struggles a bit more.
Okay, this one, Hardik Pandya versus Lasith Malinga. We saw very different Lasith Malinga today. Gentle looseness to start. And Hardik Pandya, even though this one didn't exactly pan out the way we hoped, because Pandya was out much before Malinga came back for that second spell.
Yeah, I thought Malinga's spell, especially in the at the end of the innings at the death, was going to be important, because I didn't think he was going to have too much luck in that first 10 overs in his opening spell. And he still ended up getting the key wickets of, I think he got Shikhar Dhawan and Rohit Sharma. So they were still...
But much later than Sri Lanka expected.
Yeah, two very important wickets still.
Okay, this one, Bhuvneshwar Kumar versus Niroshan Dickwella. Well, the scoreboard says Dickwella caught Jadeja bowled Kumar.
Well, I thought Dickwella was going to be a very important player for Sri Lanka at the top of the innings. Didn't turn out to be that way, because Kumar got him out. So that was another good pick.
I think one last one, coming up. Yes, Ravindra Jadeja versus Angelo Mathews. Sadly for Jadeja, he got smashed out of the attack by the top order of Sri Lanka, and by the time Angelo came in, he was already out of the attack. Yeah,
this battle should have happened, but because Jadeja didn't bowl very well,
the game would have gotten over much earlier.
Yeah, because he didn't bowl very well, then this never happened. But it should have.
Okay, let's talk about India as well, because let's not forget 322 is no joke. I mean, Shikhar Dhawan played an absolute masterful innings, 100 continuing his great run with the Champions Trophy, 300s now for him, and also that great start which was provided by him and Rohit Sharma.
At half-time, I think India would have been reasonably happy scoring 321. As I said, you always go into the shed at half-time when you bat first thinking, oh, we left 10 or 20 runs out there. As I said, if they're being super critical, it was that period between 30 or 40 where Yuvraj struggled a little bit, that perhaps they left about 20 runs. So they could have possibly, if they played the perfect game, could have scored 340 or 350. I think that would have been a bridge too far for Sri Lanka. But credit to Sri Lanka, because I think they bowled very well in that period.
But just talking about the way the Indians paced their innings as well, once again, Shikhar Dhawan and Rohit Sharma deciding not to take the early risk to build their innings and just, they seem unstoppable. In the Champions Trophy, they've already gone past Gale and Chandrapal as the most successful opening pairing. Well,
they have. They've batted magnificently. They've got a great average in Champions Trophy, and they love playing in England. I think they average over 90 together when they open in Champions Trophies out in England. But look, the formula for India is working. They had an off day today with the ball in Sri Lanka. As I said, India didn't do too much wrong, and Sri Lanka were magnificent. But
could a case be made, Chris, that the bowling wasn't as sharp? There were a lot of 50-50 chances, a couple of instances on the boundary where the fielding wasn't that sharp, or are we just nitpicking?
Yeah, there was a couple of missed opportunities on the boundary. There was a couple of misfields. Rohit Sharma missed a difficult chance. But I think their batting formula is right. They 48 to 50 in the first 10 overs, don't look to lose a wicket and build. And as I said, these days you've got to score over 300, and that's the way their formula works, and they did it again today, but it just wasn't quite enough against a firing Sri Lankan batting order.
Yes, it just wasn't India's day, especially with the ball, because whatever they tried, Sri Lanka just had the answers. On this note, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to look at how open this group has suddenly become. Welcome back. Now, Group B at the ICC Champions Trophy 2017 has been blown wide open with Sri Lanka's clinical run chase. Let's now just tell you why. Now, how often have you seen this? With one round of matches left to play, all four teams are locked at the same points. South Africa, India, Sri Lanka and Pakistan all have 2 points after playing out their first two matches. The net run rate favours India and South Africa as things stand. But with the points level, we now have two effective quarterfinals to seal the fate of this group. And then let's just set up those two virtual quarterfinals. Then a dented India will now face the world's #1 ranked team, South Africa, for a spot in the semi-finals at the Oval in London on Sunday. Both teams are favourites to go through from this group, but now only one will proceed. And the final game of the group stages will pit Sri Lanka against Pakistan at Cardiff Sophia Gardens on Monday. The two bottom-ranked sides in the competition are now rejuvenated with victories against their more fancied opponents. Chris, just look at his points table. Wow, who would have thought that going into the last set of matches, all teams on 2 points each. So anyone can go through. The winners of either match go through, hoping there's no rain.
Yeah, I think we never would have picked it. We actually thought the net run rate may come into, may need to be needed, but as it turned out, because we thought India were going to go through, obviously, and then second place was going to be perhaps down to run rate. But now it's just straight quarterfinals. So, you know, from a spectator's point of view, you couldn't ask for a better result.
But where does this leave both teams, especially India and South Africa? Because earlier they would have expected to go through looking at how weak, or technically, before the tournament started, at least on paper, how weak Sri Lanka and Pakistan were. But one of them is going home.
I know, it's amazing to think that India versus South Africa is now a quarter-final, because as you said, they were two teams that you'd expect to have gone through from this group, and now only one of them can. So it's a massive game coming up.
And there's also no momentum now, because both have come off tough losses.
Yeah, well, they both played very well in their first game, and then sort of had a bit of a slip-up in their second game. So they're both coming from what they would consider bad losses, so both teams are under severe pressure. And
the last game is Pakistan versus Sri Lanka. Both these teams will be bouncing, because if you look at the first games both the teams played, they needed a reaction. And what better reaction than the way Pakistan bossed South Africa, and now Sri Lanka have effected a marvellous run chase against India.
Exactly. So Sri Lanka and Pakistan had the opposite to South Africa and India. They had two very poor starts, and they had to do something to kickstart their tournament. And, you know, both of them responded pretty well. Pakistan beating South Africa. I know it was a rain-affected match, but they were certainly in control in that game. And then Sri Lanka with, I think, a world record run chase for them in England. I think it equaled one that they'd done previously against England. But, you know, with the side that, you know, wasn't their strongest from a batting point of view, because they've lost a Taranga through suspension. So it was a wonderful effort. And these quarterfinals now are going to be great viewing.
Okay, when they set up the ICC Champions Trophy 2017, there were just group matches and the semi-finals. Well, now, especially in this group, we're going to have two quarterfinals to decide who goes through to the semi-finals. On that note, Chris Harris, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a long day.
It has.
It has?
Thank you.
Okay. But 1 week from the start of the ICC Champions Trophy 2017, we're already approaching the business end. The last round of the group stage fixtures get underway with a very vital game for Chris Harris's New Zealand in their bid to make the knockout rounds. Kane Williamson's side go up against Mashrafe Mortaza's Bangladesh in a must-win clash for both teams at the Sophia Gardens in Cardiff. The sides have met 5 times since the 2015 World Cup. New Zealand have won 4, but the last of those meetings went in favour of Bangladesh, with victory in Dublin last month propelled them to 6th spot in the ICC ODI rankings. That's it then from us. Chris Harris and I will be back at 2:30 p.m. on Friday to set up that game. Till then, goodbye. Thanks for watching.